Hi everyone, I'm your host Neha and you're tuned into Durian Dreaming, the show that brings you extraordinary stories from seemingly ordinary experiences in Indonesia's fast-paced market. Let's dive into today's conversation with another inspiring guest. I'm thrilled to welcome Samir Gupte, CEO of VML Indonesia, largest creative and digital agency in the world. With over 20 years of global experience, Samir has led multicultural teams and driven success for brands like Nestlé, Pfizer, and Coca-Cola. He's earned over 60 awards, including the big one like the Cannes. Welcome aboard, Samir. We are very excited to have you on a podcast, Durian Dreaming.
Thank you so much, Neha. I'm really, really excited and looking forward to our conversation today. Not done this before, so obviously really, really excited about doing this now.
We are also very excited to have you with us, Samir. So, over 20 years in the advertising industry, that is a lot of time. What drew you to the advertising industry? Was it a conscious choice or did you fall in love with it by accident?
It's actually a funny story, and my earliest memory is when I was a teenager. We had got a new TV back then, and we were obviously watching serials and episodes, etc. But my brother and I were more interested in ads. And I still remember we made a little notebook and we would literally note down all the ads that we watched on that particular day. It was fun to watch ads, they were entertaining, and we kept noting down ads for some time. And again, at that point in time, we did not know what a 30-second edit or a 15-second edit is or whatever those edits are, but we just kept noting down ads and the little stories that we saw. It was really, really fascinating. And I think that was the first time I started getting fascinated by ads. It was, at that time, it was, I did not know about what an advertising agency is or there is a career in advertising. But yeah, it was just, I think maybe that's my earliest memory of liking ads, liking watching ads, and also, looking at magazines and, cutting not necessarily pictures, but, cutting and collecting ads in a guard book. So that's my earliest memory of what I liked about advertising and per se an ad. But many years later, as a part of my master's, I went to Bombay and did my summer training or internship at Lintas. That's what it was called then. And that's when I realized that this is something I really, really like. That the agency world, the agency office was very different from other offices that I had seen. The place was fun. There was so much energy. There was chaos. No 2 days were the same. The culture was informal and fun, and I just felt like this is what I really want to do once I complete my education, and that's exactly what I did. So I completed my education, applied to an agency called Tricaya Gray, or known as Gray now, got through that, and since then I've not left the business because I think it's too much fun.
So, in a way, as the famous business author Sumanta Ghoshal mentioned, it was really the smell of the place that convinced you, the culture, the vibe. That's so important, I guess, for all of us to be in a place where we feel we can thrive.
Sometimes when I think about, okay, when was the first time I thought maybe I want to be a part of that? And again, like I said, it was not a conscious choice at that point in time, but I think, I just liked the concept of ads or watching ads and all. And I never thought that, watching ads to making ads or being a part of the creative industry was a part of the master plan, but that's the way it sort of turned out.
The advertising industry has evolved a lot over the past few decades, sometimes at breakneck speed with a lot of disruption. Like 20 years ago, there was no social media, no performance marketing. And it seems like the speed just keeps getting faster. How are you seeing this evolution and change?
Yeah, it is. I mean, like we used to talk about this: make one TV ad, create two press ads, do
Mm.
three outdoor billboards, and your job is done. I think it's far from true now. I think we can no longer think about that. And again, more and more with the kind of attention spans that all of us have and the kind of multiple devices that we engage with, I don't think we can think of that anymore. And again, I think it's not just about um, it's no longer about communicating to the audiences. I think it's about connecting with the audiences. So gone are the days when you could do just one way broadcast kind of stuff. And I'm talking obvious stuff now, of course. But I think it's more and more getting more and more complex, fragmented ability to understand why a particular person or an audience consumes a platform or a media or a medium, and then sort of trying to connect on that one becomes really, really important. And I think that's again, that's the fun and fun part of this business because it keeps evolving.
So tell me now, how did you come to Indonesia? Like advertising is so much about understanding culture and local nuances. Even understanding one's own culture takes ages. Yet here you are in Indonesia leading one of the biggest agencies. What brought you here?
So before moving to Jakarta, I was leading the activation division of Ogilvy, which was called Ogilvy Action. And during my activation days, I traveled a lot within India, across states, villages, towns, etc. And also got to travel to a few other countries. Again, my work or my specialization took me to the US, UK, parts of Southeast Asia. And one of the countries I visited back in 2010 and 2011 was Indonesia. And then around 2012, there was an opportunity within the system, within the Ogilvy system, in Indonesia. And I thought, why not? So my wife Supriya and I came to Jakarta, um, did the interview. So I think the place felt, and I think the timing also felt right. And therefore, we decided to move here in 2013. Um, the funny part is initially nobody thinks of being in Jakarta for a long time. But once you are here, um, it grows on you, and then you never know when 2 years have passed, and then the fourth year, fifth year, and I didn't realize that this is my 11th year. So that's the way it works. So this is a great place to be. Indonesia is a great country, and Jakarta is a great place if anybody wants to move here. Um, yeah, it grows on you. You plan to stay here for a few years, but then that plan never succeeds.
That's true. Actually, I've heard that from so many foreigners and expats settled here. So many of them come here thinking it will be for a year or two, but then just end up staying here for many years. The country just grows on you and one falls in love with it. Now, let's talk about a career in the advertising industry. Many of our listeners are curious about how does a career in the ad world unfold? Like if you start as an intern, what happens next?
So again, it all depends on which part of the advertising agency you want to be associated with. So there are various functions or division within an agency. For example, you would have client servicing or account management, as we call it, which is interacting with clients and managing clients and their businesses and their brands. We obviously have a creative function, and within creative function, there is the copy part of it and the art part of it. Then we have a strategy or a planning function. The people who look at data, look at insights, and come up with a strategy, brand strategy, business strategy. Then we also have, like in our case at VML, we also have the entire MarTech and data teams, where there are people who are experts in CRM, data, website designs, loyalty programs, etc., etc. So first things first is, if you want to understand um, where you would like to grow or where you would like to make a career in, I think the best thing for somebody who wants to start is just join an agency, spend at least 2 to 3 months in the agency, understanding the different functions and different divisions and the different expertise. Try and figure out what you like more, and then maybe spend time in that function. Yeah.
Thank you for telling us how one can navigate the career within the industry and what would be a good starting point. India and Indonesia are two very big countries with lots of regional, cultural, religious diversity. You have developed award winning campaigns that capture the essence of local culture. What are some of the differences that you see here?
There are similarities and differences, of course, between the two countries, but I think the commonality is actually the diversity that we have. Like we always used to say, like there are so many Indias within India, and I think that's true about Indonesia also. And I jokingly sometimes tell people, Jakarta Selatan, Jakarta South is not Jakarta, and Jakarta is not Indonesia. So I think the diversity in terms of language, culture, food, I think that exists in Indonesia also. But coming from India, and because as I said, I used to travel so much and I could understand the diverse nature of different parts of India. When I came to Indonesia, I was already in a way, how do you say, mentally prepared that I'm going into a place which is as diverse as India, might not be as large as India. And therefore, to appreciate the diversity of culture, ways of working, um, people, languages, food, etc., and understand that and sort of build on that rather than letting that become a barrier for you is something I was very conscious about. I mean, I sometimes again jokingly talk about the chaos that we have, and I think when I look at Jakarta, I think I just find not just Jakarta, I'm just saying even in Indonesia, I think I just find the chaos here much better and disciplined than the chaos back in India. So, I when I moved here, I made that choice. I made that choice. I was prepared and open to embrace the diversity. I knew it was not going to be the same, but there are obviously good things that sort of overpower the challenges that we have. And just to sort of illustrate that, I mean, one of the best things about being in Indonesia or being in Jakarta is the people, the welcoming nature of people. Really, really warm, always smiling, always helpful kind of nature. I think that's one of the reasons why I also stayed in this country for so long. I think people here are smarter when it comes to work-life balance. I think that's something that I really, really appreciated and I learned about it. Overworking even on weekends, etc., is not a really thing. Is not something that people look up to. I think that's there. Um, Overall, I think better quality of life, ease, and access to comfort. I think that's there. People are far more respectful overall. I think, some of these, pluses is that, you have, and that sort of makes you ignore or overcome the other challenges. So it is a diverse country, but then enjoy the diversity, appreciate the diversity. That's what I learned, and be open-minded. And that's what really helped me sort of be here for the last 11 years.
That's such a beautiful perspective. And what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when you first came here?
If you ask me honestly, the challenge is, and I keep saying this, cultural calibration. Yeah. Cultural calibration in my mind is the biggest one. I mean, what worked wherever you were working before is not necessarily going to work where you are right now. So apart from learning new things, there is a lot of unlearning and relearning that is required. Yeah. Sometimes the pushy, aggressive ways that we are used to in India is not necessarily what works here. Yeah, it is more about consensus. It's about getting people together. It's about, rallying them, rallying with them, and the whole aspect of collectively doing things and achieving things rather than sort of, individually doing things. I think if you understand that, if you are able to calibrate culturally, I think you'll be able to do well here. Yeah.
That's so true. Even for me, the spirit of gotong royong, of rallying together, of making progress together and not alone is so uniquely Indonesian.
I mean, we've read this and we talked about this and we hear this every day. This is a collective society, and but I think we know this, and I've sort of, like I said, I've experienced this. If you want to grow, you have to grow with your people. It is not about you being ahead, you are with them, and all of you are growing together. So, um, collectivism and, growing together is more important rather than you just growing, individually or, as a person.
Okay. Can you share any moment or any incident in your career where you really had to think outside the box to succeed here?
Um, there are actually many, but let me let me talk on one which was I thought was really, really interesting. And this was again when I had just come into Jakarta, my first expat job, working with different nationalities, different people, different teams. Some of them were far senior than I was, etc. So I think, in any organization when you work with like diverse team like this, there are times and there are times when not everybody or not all the people or teams are 100% aligned to you or what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. So there's always, diverse views, different thinking, different points of view, different ways of working, etc., etc. And I had to make a big decision at one point in time, and I had to ensure that everybody, the team that I'm talking about, the seniors, um, align to what we are trying to do. I was a little worried about a particular meeting where I had to sort of get everybody together and all. Um, And funnily, I was just generally discussing this, and one of my Indonesian team members said something interesting. And I'm loosely translating. I don't know whether that's a famous Indonesian saying or not, but I'm loosely translating it to meant something like if you want a clean river, then clean the different streams. It's loosely translated, and which trigger the thought. I mean, I don't know whether it's an obvious Indonesian saying, but it was something like that. But it triggered a thought. I said, if I have to get all these people together, why
Mm.
not? Why don't I sort of start talking to them separately first? So before the meeting, I actually did what we call it pre-meetings or whatever, and these were casual catch-ups with people, different team leaders, etc., etc. Um, and in during this individual catch-ups, I think most of the team members were more, the leaders were upfront and direct, and they shared their concerns and what they valued, etc., etc. I saw the vulnerability, I understood the fears and all, and that actually helped me prepare better. So once I had already done the pre-alignment, when I went into the actual meeting, it was not difficult. I think the pre-alignment or a consensus before the meeting. So I always call it a meeting. Yeah, it was like a individual alignment before a collective alignment. And I think
Mm.
that me, because in a big meeting, we are not in Indonesia. We don't have confrontations. We don't have arguments. Losing face is a no. So you would want to avoid that. So the alignment before the big meeting actually helped me do that, and that triggered from that saying that I had heard from that colleague of mine. So I think that particular incident helped me understand the power of consensus and the need to maintain harmony.
Wow, it's really a smart approach to leadership, especially in a culture where avoiding conflict are important. It's easier to get things moving when, like you rightly said, when there's a pre-alignment. People don't like to lose face. We've also touched upon how Indonesia is very diverse, many languages, many traditions, many cultures. So tell me, when you're building campaigns for the clients here and which needs to resonate with audiences across, but given so much of diversity, how do you handle the complexity of building such campaigns?
So there are a few ways of doing this, and this is again what I've tried over the last 10, 11 years is one is try and understand as much as you can about the culture, about the audiences, about their behaviors, etc., which is again very common sensible sense, but yeah, you have to do that. Yeah. That's the first part. The second part is also surround yourself with people who can then um, bring out or highlight those nuances, because sometimes we are not able to understand cultural nuances, um, local lingo, or slangs, and those kind of things. So I think um, while you can do whatever you can do in terms of doing market visits and learnings and attending research groups and talking to the audiences, you also need a team of people who can help you understand finer nuances which might not be very obvious to you. And I think that's what is really, really important, because um, like I said, what works in Jakarta might not necessarily resonate with every, in outside Jakarta, in Medan or Surabaya or some other places. So a combination of these two, yeah. And the third important part is the openness to ideas, because sometimes what happens is when you are evaluating an idea, you are thinking from your own perspective, which might not necessarily be always the right or audience perspective. And that's where the nuanced definitions and, whether it's a situation, whether it's emotions, etc., I think that helps a lot. And that is what has sort of helped me in building campaigns which are resonated um, with people across Indonesia and not just targeted to a certain pocket within Jakarta, etc.
Can you share an example of any such campaign which is very unique to Indonesia?
Um, there are lots there. I mean, again, there are lots of campaigns. Again, when we were, I'll give you an executional example. So generally, what happens is when you're talking to the many Indonesias within Indonesia, you should also, resist from portraying or showcasing stuff which is not relatable to everyone across Indonesia. For example, Jakarta has MRT and big malls and all of this. And in your typical advertising, you will convey that okay, it is aspirational, but is it relatable? So I think that's the first question to ask. So if you are trying to appeal to to a wider set of audiences, for some of our brands, that's what we've done. We've looked at things which might be not very Jakarta centric, and therefore, picked up situations, picked up homes, picked up dialects or languages which might be widely accepted rather than being very urban centric in our communication. We've done this for brands across many brands. I wouldn't name any right now, but yeah, that helps. There is always a delicate balance between being aspirational and being relatable. You don't want to, be too aspirational and distant. At the same time, you also don't want to sort of appeal to the lowest common denominator. So you need to strike a good balance.
Right now the ad world is buzzing with Omnicom and IPG merger. Everyone has a point of view on whether it's a smart move or not. You yourself have had some experience leading mergers in the ad world. I understand you led the merger of Geometry. Now tell us about mergers in the ad world and what's the most important thing that drives their success.
So when I moved to Indonesia in 2013, one of the tasks that I was given and the leadership task that I was given was to merge two WPP companies. One was Ogilvy Action, which was the activation arm of Ogilvy, and G2, which was the activation arm of Grey then. Yeah. Mergers, all of us know, are not the easiest things to do. They are complex. They are not necessarily easy. Um, but this is not, and what I learned is this was not just about merger of two teams or getting two teams or specializations together. It was more about merger of culture and values and ways of working and a common ambition, etc., etc. So both sides believe that they know better or they are better or they have better expertise, etc. So how do you get people together and make them believe in a common culture, purpose, and have a common single and have a single or a common ambition? So I think that was my biggest task. Um, because, like I said, both sides were equally strong. Getting them onto the same, level was not the easiest task. And what we did was an interesting exercise. We called it a culture workshop. So we started with that. So culture workshop was basically getting the senior most people from both sides and doing a workshop outside the office, trying to understand what people value most in their organization. What are the things that they liked? What are the ways of working? What is the specialization that they built, etc. Then we also ask them what are the things that you would want to carry forward and what are the things that you would want to leave behind, because you always have pluses and minuses. And we did this on both sides, and then we came together saying collectively what is it that we would want to take forward. And then from that came a common, a vision statement and an ambition and what we want to do. So sometimes, like I said, we have to understand what people value the most and are they being protective about that. Once you understand that and then say, okay, what they value the most is protected, and coming together will actually help them become better, or help them do a better job and achieve their individual personal goals. I think that sort of eases things out. So that's what we did as a part of the culture workshop. Then there were other small things also that we did, which is um, one of the things that you happens is you are used to sitting with your team and working with your team. What I did was I said, let's just combine the seating. If there's one person from team A and one person from team B, which are coming from two different agencies, let them sit together. I know it's a little bit inconvenient that I'm not sitting with my team, but what I wanted to do was basically get people to work together, sit together, and be next to each other. So I think those are the kind of things. So again, going back, sometimes mergers are not just about merging two teams together and bringing expertise together and getting efficiencies. It's about building that culture. It's about building that common ambition. It's about building the common values that everybody wants to sort of uphold and respect.
This is so interesting because so many of the mergers and acquisitions are financial exercises, largely focused on the P&L. But the advertising world is all about people business and creating an environment that during and after merger where everyone feels that they can contribute their best is super critical. And humans can also be very irrational at times. I came across this book called Nudge, which focuses on how brands or society can encourage consumers to take certain actions by leveraging psychological triggers or behavioral insights. Have you had a chance to create some behavior change campaigns?
So I think first of all, most of the stuff that we do is trying to influence a particular behavior or change a particular behavior. And again, the campaigns, the behavior change campaigns that I've worked on the most are campaigns which are around making people wash their hands with soap before they eat. Yeah. I think again, now after COVID sounds again, it's very commonsensical. Of course, you need to wash your hands, etc., etc. But despite several reminders and despite people knowing that you have to wash your hands before you eat, people don't do that. And that's a behavior which is in a way set in their minds. And how do you influence that and change that? That's what behavior change is all about. That one part which is about this. If you look at a lot of stuff that we do in advertising is about influencing behavior. It could be about building a new habit. It could be about giving up a new habit. It could be about, moving from one brand to another. It could be about, so there are multiple things that you do, but it's mostly about influencing behavior. Um, one of my favorite campaigns was the Lifebuoy Roti campaign that we had done back in India, which we still talk about, which is again, how do you remind people to wash hands before they eat? And I think our team came up with this brilliant idea of stamping the roti with a message saying "Lifebuoy se haath dhoya kya?" or "Did you wash your hands with Lifebuoy?" I mean, that is moment of truth. You're about to eat and you get served a roti which has a message on it, and you will be reminded. And most of the times, you will get up and wash your hands if you have not washed your hands before that.
Oh, wow. I recall that Lifebuoy campaign. I remember it was the buzz of the advertising world when it happened, and I believe it was recognized in various global advertising awards.
Yes, it was.
Oh, wow. Samir, you've also worked with organizations like UNICEF and the Clinton Foundation. Can you talk about some of the initiatives that you led with these organizations?
So, like for example, with UNICEF, again in partnership with Lifebuoy, it was all about promoting hand wash, not necessarily only with Lifebuoy, promoting hand wash per se. With Clinton Health Access, again, it was around the hand wash campaigns only. In both the cases, again, we were talking to audiences from rural areas, sometimes who are not as educated, as evolved. They did not have access to mass media or TV. So how do you communicate, educate, and sort of bring about behavior change in those kind of audiences? Again, there are simple things like, we sometimes create communication thinking that I'm talking to a mother and I sort of want to explain to her why her washing hands before she feeds a child is important. Um, and again, we learned this. Of course, it's important, and you do communication. It doesn't have to be TV communication. It could be through charts and stories, etc., etc. But one of the interesting things that we learned when we did our market visit or rural visits back in India was, um, you are targeting the mothers and creating communication for the mothers. But you go into the villages, sometimes there are no women in the village in at home because they are in the field. They are working with their husbands or they're doing something else. Yeah. So who's looking after the younger child? Sometimes it's the older sister or older brother and all. We are thinking that we are communicating to a mother, but somebody else is actually taking care of the child. Yeah. So sometimes when you have to think about how do I communicate to a child who herself is not well equipped to understand the concept, to say that if you are taking care of a child, you need to do this. So there are lots of these interesting things that you do and you learn when you do visits. Sometimes it's not just about individual, it's about sometimes getting the community involved. Sometimes it's about not just me, myself, but me, myself, my community, me, myself, my village and all. So a lot of those stuff matter. And with both UNICEF and both Clinton Health Access initiative, this is what we try to do. We try to educate not just the person, but we also understood the ecosystem, if I may call that, around the person, and say, okay, how do we influence other people around them as well?
That's a very insightful approach, Samir, and it really highlights how understanding the whole community and involving everyone around the individual can make a big difference. Samir, now you've talked about what it takes to be settled in Indonesia and how has Indonesia shaped you. But I still want to understand what is the biggest lesson that Indonesia has taught you? I mean, either personally or professionally.
I think If you ask me that, there are few that I would like to talk about. I think um, patience and persistence. Yeah, I think very, very important here. You would have heard words like Santai, Sabar, Sabantar, Tungu. I think those words are used more for expats like us. So I think that's one of the things that I've really learned. I think patience and persistence, this place grows on you. You will find solutions. You just need to have patience. You can't always be in a rush. So I think that's one. Second, if you ask me, is respect and being respectful. I think people generally here are respectful. They are respectful of hierarchy. They're respectful of um, outsiders like us. And I think that also helps calibrate your own ways or your own behavior in this country. Building trust and building relationship, I think that's again an important thing. A lot here happens if you have a great relationship and people trust you, whether it's your own team members, whether it's clients, whether it's vendors, whether it's partners, everyone. Unless you have a solid relationship and you build that trust, things will not move. Yeah. And last, and again, you've been here for long as well, but being thankful. I think terima kasih is another word that I think we hear and we use so much here that I don't think we would have ever used in our lives back in India or in other places. Another thing that you would have also realized, that you call your driver pa or sir. Yeah, you call your maids ibu or madam in that sense. Yeah, so you're being respectful. Yeah, the other words that I use, which was about sabar. Sabar is sabar, have patience. Sabantar is just wait for some time. Tungu is also, those are different versions of wait, please have patience, um, relax, kind of a thing. Because as outsiders, sometimes we think the pace of work or pace of doing things here is slow, but I think that's what they're trying to tell us. Sabantar, have some sabr, um, have some patience, and things will happen. And trust me, that's the way it works. No matter how much you rush, things will take their time and things will happen. But that's something that I've learned here. I'm far more patient than what I was maybe 10 years back, or even 15 years back.
Thanks, Samir, for teaching us some of the local Bahasa words, which are very important words if one needs to live and thrive in Indonesia. Samir, one last question. If you could give one piece of advice to someone looking to thrive in Indonesia or navigating a long term career here, what would it be?
So I think two things, if I can, one plus one bonus in this case is, one is patience. This market is, you cannot say, I will come here and change things overnight. If you're looking at that, then this is not the market for you to come. Yeah, I think really, really important. And the second, like I talked about it, I think respect for culture, respect for people, respect for the way things are done here. Yeah. This is the way the country works. So I think if you don't have that respect, it's not going to work, which is connected to what I said, cultural calibration. Unless you understand that, it's not going to work. So I think those two for me are the most important things, if I may say so. If you really want to be here and make the most of this make the most of this beautiful country that we have, I think you need to have patience and be respectful.
Great. Thank you so much, Samir, for joining us. Very, very insightful and very engaging conversation. And that's a wrap for this episode of Durian Dreaming. I hope today's discussion sparked some new ideas for you. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts, and stay tuned for more exciting stories. Until next time, keep dreaming big.